A pair of Texas wide receivers. Could they be San Francisco 49ers in April? Could they even be there for the 49ers at pick 31? Xavier Worthy, A.D. Mitchell, and updates on the defensive coordinator. All that coming up on today's Locked On 49ers.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker at BD Peacock, at Eric_Crocker, at CrocTimeU, at Crocky209. You can find him all over the socials and find a lot of his clips that he's talking about with some of these prospects we've been going over here on Locked On 49ers, building our Peacock Locked On 49ers draft board. Appreciate all the everydayers that are with us all the time, every day, subscribed on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcast. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to play with. If your bet wins, visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. When I'm looking at prospects, Croc, I always start with the good on good. And when you had Kool-Aid McKinstry, you look at him against LSU because they got some good receivers, right? Cornerback. You want to see who he's facing they got some talent, and you put on the Texas tape and you see a couple of really good wide receivers. And number 5 and number 1, I believe, right, jumped out to me when I was watching Kool-Aid with Alabama against Texas. So those are our next two. Here is the pair of wide receivers that are in the 2024 NFL draft: Xavier Worthy, the speedster, and bigger-bodied A.D. Mitchell. Let's start with Worthy, Croc, because I know he's a guy you talked a lot about last week when we were breaking down some prospects. And man, with Xavier Worthy, he's listed at 6'1", 172. So obviously he's skinny. And if you're a skinny wide receiver, you probably got speed. And man, does Xavier Worthy have speed. And his burst off the line is probably one of the best I've seen in a while. Like, dude just rockets out of his stance and into his routes. Then from there, maybe some work to be done on who he is as a receiver. But what did you see from Texas wide receiver Xavier Worthy?
I think with Worthy and with Mitchell, there's one thing that might eliminate them from being a 49er candidate. We'll get to that in a second. But from an ability standpoint and how explosive of an athlete that Xavier Worthy is, it's very easy to see. And aside from him being able to just run straight and run by guys, I think his ability to just play with the ball in his hands, I thought he did a really good job with his contact balance, especially for a guy who's slender, a little slight, but they end arounds, screens. It's like, how can we get the ball in this guy's hands? Because he's so dynamic, and he did a really good job with that. So I think all those things were fine to see. And then how they at times schemed them open. It was clear sometimes when they are running off a guy to clear out the area for Xavier Worthy, kind of run a deep bench route, like a kind of a deep out-breaking route, and catch the ball in space. I thought he did all those things terrific. So we'll get to some things he needs to work on, but just from an explosibility standpoint, you look at the 49ers and all the receivers they have. Even I think you can even include Danny Gray in this. Danny Gray, a speedster on paper, ran a 4.3, but if you remember, if you go back and listen to the episode when he was drafted, I'm like, he does not play to that speed. Like, you just don't see it. Every once in a while, like when the ball is in his hand and maybe he's catching the crosser, you'll see, oh, he has speed. Look at him outrun these guys. But for the most part, like just route running, utilizing the threat of his speed in the route, those were not things that you consistently saw with Danny Gray, which is probably why he ran really fast, but ended up being the last pick in the 3rd round, even with all the comp picks, so dang near a 4th round pick. Xavier Worthy will likely be a 1st round pick. So whatever you were thinking that you potentially would get with Danny Gray, I would say Xavier Worthy is those things at a higher level. He has a burst that nobody else on the 49ers has, with his ability to just run straight past guys, but also work all the underneath areas as well.
I wrote that down. I wrote Rich Man's Danny Gray. I think a lot of the things the 49ers were probably hoping they were going to get out of Danny Gray. And who knows, the book's not written on Danny Gray quite yet. And we'll see in year 3 if he can get on the field and impact for the 49ers. But Xavier Worthy has all the speed. I don't know if he's going to run. I don't know what his 40 time is going to be, but he plays fast. He's got the speed, but he's got a lot else. One thing, can I guess what the one thing is?
Yes.
Is it that they're not in Club K9?
What's Club K9?
You remember Club K9? That was one of the game ball episodes we gave out from dudes that are wired a certain way that the 49ers like Juwan Jennings and blocking to the whistle and actually the other club, Yak Bros. I'm not sure if either one of these guys is necessarily in Yak Bros because Worthy runs because he's got speed, but I'll see him get corralled pretty darn easy with that 172-pound frame when a defensive player gets his hands on him, and it's pretty much over for the most part. So I think Yak Bros, they don't fit in that club necessarily. And Club K9, there's times where AD Mitchell will be blocking guys, but there's other times where he's just kind of watching the plays. Like there's a running back over here, and he's like, cool run, man. All right. And he's not involved. So, and it's almost, you actually talked about how if they're running guys off on the backside of a play, I saw this a lot with AD Mitchell and, some with Worthy as well. They know that they're the runoff guy, and Brock Purdy will throw the ball to the runoff guy. So you can't quit on it. And I think I saw both those guys, and maybe they're just coached this way. They're like, don't run out of gas because you're not going to get thrown the ball here. You're running somebody off, and you can tell when it's those routes. And I think DBs can tell when it's those routes too.
Yeah, I don't think they're taught to like take off a play because at the end of the day, they'll run you off. You can have a break, you can get a rest, but we need this big explosive play. So yeah, run your guy off if need be, and you need to be going full speed to clear out that area and take multiple defenders with you. I think like we saw with Brandon Ayuk in the Super Bowl, one of the early drives, he was a runoff guy and outran the coverage, outran the corner and the safety. Xavier Worthy definitely has that type of ability. He gets on guys quick and in a hurry. And watching them against TCU, he beat the defensive back number 2. Good defensive back, smoked him by 5 yards. Quarterback drastically underthrew it. So it would be nice to have a quarterback that maybe has a bigger arm, but maybe if you have a guy like Brock Purdy who doesn't have a big of an arm, but understands how to play to his strengths and would just get the ball out sooner, where I think Quinn Ewers maybe thinks his arm is bigger than it is, and oftentimes see him hold on to the ball a little too long, then try to make the throw while the receiver's further down the field. Xavier Worthy, definitely an easy field stretcher. Like Brandon Ayuk, he's the 49ers like best vertical guy right now. I don't know if that's like a big like part of his game. I don't think we're just gonna run a bunch of go routes with him. Definitely not Deebo Samuel's game. But with Xavier Worthy, like you would definitely include that in his game as well as the other things he brings. But I like that you talked about Club K9, and I definitely caught your drift there. I don't think either one of those guys really want to block. And we joke about, and I say we, defensive backs, I tell my guys, like, man, these receivers are soft. They don't want to block you. But these two guys, I don't think that they want to block. And as a 49er player, you have to be wired a different way or you just won't play. So even a guy like Richie James, who was the smallest receiver the 49ers had, he would throw his body around and really get in there and try to block guys. And sometimes they're asked to block ends. I mean, we saw that with Brandon Ayuk having to block year 2, Micah Parsons, and it sprung Elijah Mitchell for a touchdown in that wild card game out in Dallas. You got to block the big guy. You got to block the big dogs too and be really willing to throw your body around to do that. I don't know if it's one thing that they just weren't asked to do that at Texas with the kind of programming it is and with Sark being there. I'd say that maybe not the case because Alabama, you watch Devontae Smith, a guy who was 164 pounds, he'd block with the best of them. He was throwing his body around and his small, weak, whatever, but the effort was 100% there. I can't say I saw the effort in the blocking game for either Xavier Worthy or Mitchell.
I saw Mitchell block really well a few times, and then other times he just didn't engage, period. So that was sort of strange to me because he could be a really big blocker, and he's a much bigger body guy than Xavier Worthy. We'll get to more of AD Mitchell's scouting report as well. Just to finish up with Worthy, what do you think about just his ability as with hands, tracking the football, bringing in the football? I feel like I saw too many drops. I feel like sometimes it didn't look super natural for him as just a pure, pass catcher. And while he does have all the speed in the world, Croc, you talked about him being a first-round pick. I don't know if I think there'll be a better player there at 31 for the 49ers. I don't know if Worthy ends up sneaking in the first round despite his explosive ability.
I think if he runs well, he'll be a first-round pick. But there were some concentration drops. And I don't even know if it was concentration drops or, is it something with bodies around him? That was a big thing with Jerry Jeudy when he was coming out. And
it made a big deal. Like those showed up huge for him in the NFL. And it was like, that drops aren't a big deal. He's going to be fine there. He gets open. He's got these sweet feet, and then he gets the NFL, and it's like, okay, he doesn't like being in the trees at all. And that was a big problem for Jerry Jeudy. It's been his biggest problem for his career.
Yeah, and that's a guy who was an elite separator in college and did a lot of things out of the slot. But at the NFL level, those windows just shrink so much. More times than not, you're going to catch passes with guys around you. Even the 49ers being the Yak Bros and all of that. When they catch the ball, a lot of times there's somebody there. They just have the ability to run away from the guy. But, and Kyle, obviously, he'll scheme it up to where you are catching the ball in space with sometimes bodies not around you. But if you look at Deebo Samuel, even on things that are schemed up, man, there's a lot of times he's catching with his hands the ball away from his body and just snatching and then just continuing to run full speed, because you do have quarterbacks that will hit you in stride. But a lot of times there is a guy nearby. And in college, especially in the Big 12, and a lot of it has to do with the wide hashes. In college, their hash marks are much wider than the NFL. So it creates more space to the field. Well, in the NFL, it's not that way. So you're catching the ball with a lot more bodies around you, and those concentration drops that may have happened in college are magnified at the NFL level. We saw it with Jerry Jeudy. I wonder between that and does Xavier Worthy play big, right? Like Devontae Adams, 6'1", 165 pounds. He played big at the catch point. Like there was literally not a weakness in his game in the sense of, or you couldn't use that as an excuse. Some people try to, he's not that big. He's not whatever, because I'm watching every film and he's jumping over 6'4" defensive backs. He's jumping over 6'2" DBs. He's making contested catches all around. Is Xavier Worthy that guy? Not sure. But that's why, we call Worthy a rich man's Danny Gray. Mm-hmm. He might be a poor man's Devontae Smith.
There you go. Xavier Worthy, I'm going to give him a top 50 grade, not a first round grade for me. I think he's a second round guy. What about A.D. Mitchell? I want to get your opinion on what you think, which Texas wide receiver goes first in the NFL draft. Next. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers is sponsored by BetterHelp Online Therapy. A lot of us spend a lot of our lives, way too much time probably, wishing we had more time. And the question is, time for what? If time was unlimited, how would you use it? The best way to squeeze that special thing into your schedule is to know what's important to you and make that a priority. Therapy can help you find what matters to you so you can do more of it and do more with that time, and make sure you don't feel like you are wasting time when you're looking back on what you are accomplishing. And sometimes it's just the right thing to do is just to check in once a week with the therapist, because they know what you are trying to accomplish in your life. Make sure you're hitting those short-term goals every week, and that will help you achieve the major goals that you're trying to hit in your life, and then you won't feel like you're running out of time. So learn to make time for what makes you happy with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today and get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. A.D. Mitchell, much bigger wide receiver for the Texas Longhorns than his counterpart, Xavier Worthy, that we just talked about. Worthy is 6'1", listed 6'1". We'll see how big he actually is. 172 pounds. I have a feeling he'll be more like 6 foot, but put a few pounds on before the combine. Maybe get into the 180s there for Xavier Worthy. But Xavier Worthy, no question about it, he's got speed. And
real quick, Xavier Worthy, I call him, we talk about Devontae Smith, Danny Gray.
Yeah.
What do you think about T.Y. Hilton as a comp?
Ooh, that didn't dawn on me, but I like it a lot. The way he plays, how he wins.
And if you think about T.Y. Hilton, especially early on, he was a 1,000-yard receiver year in and year out. So
I like that one. I like that one a lot. A.D. Mitchell is much bigger. 6'4", 196 is what he's listed as. I'm sure he's over 200 pounds by now. I don't know when he weighed in at 196, but he's a big wide receiver. And his game is
196.
He's like 210, right?
He looked.
Yeah,
he moved. We talked about Cooper DeJean and how big he looks about 206, and you're like, yeah, spot on. If I did not know, and again, I try not to look at these things, and then you told me how much he weighs. You said 190. What'd you say he weighed?
At 6'4", 196.
He looked 6'4", 215.
Yeah. I would be shocked if he's less than 210 pounds at the combine. 6'3", 6'4". He does look that big. He's a big guy, and he plays big. He will go over the top and pull balls down. He will moss guys. We saw him catch a couple of touchdowns against the Alabama defense and Kool-Aid McKinstry when we were breaking down the McKinstry film. And I didn't know a lot about A.D. Mitchell, and I didn't expect to like him as much as I did when I was watching him against Alabama. So I was excited to get into these Texas wide receivers. And then the more I watched Mitchell, the more frustrated I became, because I think he can be a better player than he is. And we talked about the blocking being hot and cold. Almost everything he does is hot and cold. Sometimes he's running full speed on a route. It's like, okay, it looks like he's got some speed. And sometimes he's just kind of loping down the field, longer strides. And to me, I don't know if he was a prep basketball player. I know he started out, he was a big time recruit, started out at Georgia. We can go to Georgia and Texas at wide receiver. You're probably a pretty good athlete from a young age. He started out at Georgia, played a couple of years, apparently wanted to be close to his young daughter that was in Texas. So that's why he transferred to Texas for his true junior season, then declared for the draft after 3 years. And he played not a lot. He wasn't a starter for Georgia, but he played as a true freshman right away. So he's got that kind of ability. And he's got really good feet. When I first watched him, I was like, okay, classic X receiver, big play guy, downfield guy. He can get open underneath, Croc. He can run routes for how big he is. The thing is, it's not consistent the way he runs, the effort he gives as a route runner, the effort he gives when he's on the backside of a play, the effort he gives as a blocker. And he shows the ability to do all of it, but it's just not consistent. So it's hard for me, because I think at their ceiling, I would take A.D. Mitchell all day over Xavier Worthy. But I don't know if he's somebody that you have to talk into showing his most consistent effort all the time. That's why I question how they were being coached, because there was just so much stuff that was kind of like off and on with these guys at Texas, and you don't see that to that degree a lot, especially with A.D. Mitchell. But I'd be surprised if it wasn't basketball in his background with the way he plays, because I think there is some, like the way he runs the routes, even as a bigger wide receiver. He can get open underneath. He could even run in the slot, be a big slot. Look at what Juwan Jennings is doing. He's like a faster version of that when he's at his peak. But is he in Club K9? Is he a yak bro? I don't think he is. And so I don't know if he's going to be the guy that the 49ers would want to take. But if I had to guess, I think there's going to be a coach out there that sees A.D. Mitchell, sees Xavier Worthy. And even though Worthy's faster, I think A.D. Mitchell has a chance to go earlier in the NFL draft, even though their grades are probably going to be very similar for me. I think they're both kind of early second round type guys.
I would be shocked if Mitchell goes ahead.
Really?
From what I've seen so far. Now, I didn't watch the Alabama game yet. Going through my all 22, just could not find it. So I kind of wanted to stick to the all 22. I might have to go to the YouTube cut-ups. I think everybody has access to this. Go to YouTube cut-ups, go A.D. Mitchell versus Alabama, and that game should pop up with just cut-ups of it. I just like to see the full field of everything. So I tend to lean more towards the all 22. But watching him, my first note is, does he have enough twitch and suddenness to change his path on route? So I'm watching him, and it looked like he had a really hard time when the defender was just kind of in front of him and not going to create the space for the receiver. He would just kind of run into the defender like on accident. And it was almost like, well, I can't change my path. Almost like a bus coming downhill, and it has to suddenly stop. It's like, well, I can't really stop. And that was like him, as opposed to being something a little bit more fluid and being able to give him something and go around it and go ahead and stack a guy. So that was one of the first things I saw where I'm like, can he not change direction at all?
I think you're, and I didn't put the full picture together, but now that you say that, that's exactly why he runs the routes the way he does. Because he knows if he's going full speed, he's not going to break down. So he knows if this is a route where I got to run a dig, where I got to push up field, but then I still got to make a hard break, I'm not going to go full speed there because I'm not going to be able to make the break that I want. But when he's running stuff that's like shorter, he doesn't have to get to full speed really. He's just, moving around more like a basketball player and moving laterally. And I think he can do some of those things, but once he gets going with those long strides, he can't break down again. You might be onto something there.
A lot of my notes initially are not very positive on them. And so the way it works is when I'm put on a game, I'll just start noting just different things I'm seeing that stands out. And then I continue to kind of revert back to that to see if these things are consistent throughout the game. So some of my first notes, again, first one, does he have the twitch or suddenness to change path, or is he going to continue to run right into defenders? Like that was the first thing I saw. And then the next note I have, blocking effort, question mark. And then the next one, can't change his path en route. Once he gets moving in a direction, it's hard for him to change. So that just kind of confirmed what I initially saw, and then it just kept popping up. So now I confirmed it. What is his 3-cone? So the reason why I asked what his 3-cone is, it doesn't look like he runs a great 3-cone, but maybe if he does, that would tell me that I can build off of it. Maybe he just either hasn't been taught to do it, which is kind of crazy because I know one of his receiver coaches in the past, Brendan Marion, and Brendan Marion was a terrific receiver in college, and I'm pretty sure he worked on it with those guys. And he actually loves Xavier Worthy. Did not mention Mitchell when I spoke to him. But maybe he loves Mitchell too. Just in the conversation, didn't mention it. All right. And then my next one, not fluid. Then the next one, he tries really hard to run routes. So what I meant by that, there's some guys that just, if you think of Michael Crabtree was kind of a 6'1", 215, but he was kind of a bigger body, but he was very fluid with his movements, and it kind of just came natural to him to be able to kind of change the direction of things. Did not get that sense with Mitchell. I just thought everything is like, I have to try really hard. You talked about how maybe he's not running really hard routes because I need to be able to change direction, and that's something that's a little bit more difficult for me. Was like trying, it's thinking, as opposed to these guys that do it more naturally. Even if you watch Xavier Worthy, it was very natural for him to just run full speed, stop, sit his route down, and kind of do those things. And then I put, somehow it was working against TCU. So he was getting open. He was creating separation, but with me watching how he was doing it, I was so confused. Like,
you know what, Croc? You also,
working?
One thing I've noticed about you, Croc, is you have a big man bias. You are a bigger corner, and you always trash on the big corners, and you like the little corners. And I think it's kind of the same with the wide receivers too. Hold on, I want to get more into this with AD Mitchell, Xavier Worthy, and we'll finish up our thoughts there, and then talk about the 49ers defensive coordinator. We got updates on some interviews that are happening now with the San Francisco 49ers next. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Get buckets right now with FanDuel on your first bet, because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's right, 150 extra bucks to play with if your first bet wins. And bet on all your favorite NBA players with quick bets, live same-game parlays. We've got exclusive props at FanDuel for any of your favorite NBA players or NBA teams. And of course, NFL season is over, but we've got those draft props as well. So just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA. All right, Croc, do you want to talk a little bit about your big man bias that you have? Because it's clear and evident you hate big corners, and now you're starting to hate big wide receivers.
I love big wide receivers. I just like them to be a little bit more. Debo, who's not big in height, but he was 215. I love Debo Samuel coming out. I was between my top 3 receivers in that class: DK Metcalf, Debo Samuel, AJ Brown. Big body guys, but they were able to move like the smaller guys. So, and DK wasn't able to move quite like the smaller guy, but he was so explosive. That's like, it doesn't matter, right? With some of these guys, especially if we're talking about first round or even second round, I just need you. Can you just please be able to change direction for me? Even if you're bigger, I can live. I would. We've been talking about, we want a big, fast receiver on the 49ers, but give me a guy that can change direction. And we also mentioned run after catch with AD Mitchell. I didn't quite see that. We 49ers have Juwan Jennings. One thing, if Juwan Jennings can't do anything else, he can break tackles. He can give you yards after catch. He was the yards after catch leader in college football when he was coming out, between him and Brandon Ayuk. So I do not mind having a big body guy, but you can't. I have to feel like I can use you in more ways than one. And I think that's my thing, whether it's cornerbacks, where it's like, the 6'2", 6'3" guys, I'm kind of, you're pegged in being an outside guy exclusively, as opposed to the 5'11" guys where I can do a little bit more with you from a matchup standpoint, move you in the slot. I could just do more with you. So I do lean towards those guys. But if you got a special guy, which again, CB1 in a couple years ago, JC Horn, Really liked him. You had Patrick Surtain. He was right up there for me as well. So I will lean towards those guys if they do certain things at a high enough level. Not quite seeing it with A.D. Mitchell.
I would say that A.D. Mitchell is more natural when the ball's in the air.
Yes.
Plucking the ball, just pure hands, tracking the ball. He's better there, which is helpful for a 6'4" wide receiver, which is why he's able to make some big plays, which is why he caught 11 touchdowns this year. He's a red zone weapon as well. And again, I think the red zone is a good place for him because if he's not getting up to full speed, he's smooth and he can move in his first couple steps and he can go up against the ball. That's why I thought he's had to have played basketball at some point in his youth because he just has a natural ability in those situations.
And that's actually my very last note. Great body control for contested catches. And that's literally, I don't know if you guys can see it, but it's like the last note for him there. So that was one thing I did see was a plus. If we're talking about the 49ers, like how much will Kyle Shanahan value that aspect of his game? I'd say that's probably very low on Kyle's priority list when it comes to receivers.
I don't think I'd be shocked if Xavier Worthy or A.D. Mitchell became 49ers because I think 31's too high, and I don't think Kyle Shanahan will like him that much. And I'm not sure either guy will be there in the second round. Maybe if one of them falls to the round 2 area, we can start talking about one of these guys being future 49ers. But it's a really good wide receiver class. So I think every team's going to see all these guys differently, and there's a chance that somebody falls. I
can't wait to watch Keon Coleman. You talk about my big wide receiver bias. Yeah. I can't wait to watch Keon Coleman. That's a guy I really liked watching him through the year. Can't wait to see if I continue to like him.
Definitely not a San Francisco 49er, Keon Coleman. But we're going to talk about him because I have a feeling he's going to go the pick right behind the 49ers at pick 32 potentially. I think that's where Keon Coleman ends up. Big Florida State wide receiver. All right. Those are the Texas wide receivers, Xavier Worthy and A.D. Mitchell. So you like Worthy as a late first round guy? What about A.D. Mitchell?
He feels closer to third round for me. Now, some of this, it could change if he runs very well. You got the combine coming up. You know, if he goes out there and just blazes the track or even runs in the 4.4s and he measures in a legit, even if it's 6'3", 205, I think people might like him. But, you know, guy like A.T. Perry last year. I liked A.T. Perry. He went in like the 6th round or something like that. So
you got to show movement skills and you got to be big and not just tall and skinny. The league doesn't like tall and skinny anymore. They left that in the 90s, man. It's gone. The 49ers might be getting a little closer to getting a defensive coordinator, Croc. And from Matt Mayoko via Kyle Shanahan said he has interviewed now 2, and there will be a 3rd interview this week. So we know for sure now that former Rams defensive coordinator and former Chargers head coach Brandon Staley has been interviewed by the 49ers. A current, I think, nickelbacks coach and defensive pass specialist, I think is his official title. I can't remember exactly what it is, but it's one of those things. He works with DBs for the 49ers. Nick Sorensen has been interviewed, and then Daniel Bullocks, also defensive backs coach, is scheduled to interview later this week with the 49ers. My question is, we shouldn't be shocked by any of those names. Those are some of the names we thought might be getting interviewed for the DC job for the 49ers. My question is, Croc, these guys are already in the building. Why is it taking so long to interview Nick Sorensen and Daniel Bullocks?
With DeMeco Ryans, when Robert Saleh left, it's like, it's DeMeco. Like, it's really your job. And they came to that conclusion fairly quick. With the interviews of the guys in building right now, and they have Bullock coming up, I don't know why. You would think that the next guy in line, and that was one of my coaches, shout out to Booker Guyton, when I went around and I was asking the Edison coaches, like, what do you think it means that he's moving them down? And I remember Booker Guyton, our head coach, said, that means they're grooming the next guy. That means they're moving him down. They're making him do something. They are grooming someone to take his job. That guy will be out of a job at the end of the year. Book said that. And now fast forward to this offseason, and they're interviewing guys in the house. I think that they know who they're leaning towards. I like the thought of Sorensen, but maybe and I'm kind of halfway joking here, but the 49ers, if you look at their last defensive coordinators, they've had the ability to collect those comp picks. And I know that's not weighing heavy on their pecking order here as it pertains to finding the right guy. But if you hire Sorensen, you are out of the running for getting comp picks for a minority, that you would get if a guy was a minority. And I don't think I'm halfway joking here, but there has been a trend of their last 3 coordinators.
And the 49ers are doing a good job of trying to find minority candidates and filter them through the entire organization, not just for the jobs that are about to get plucked away from them, but grooming them from quality control on up, right? So that's a good thing, but it's hard to continue to do that, especially when you're trying to hire a defensive coordinator. They're trying to find a good coach first, I think, for sure. But they do like those. They do like those comp picks. That is for sure. Sorensen, you think is the leader in the clubhouse?
I kind of be surprised. I don't know him, but it just feels. I just look at him. You see his background.
Looks coachy.
He looks like a defensive coordinator.
He looks like Brandon Staley. They come from the same. They come from like the same company, right?
Bigger.
They're not the same character, but they come from they're made from the same company.
I like my defensive coordinators to look like. I'm not saying you have to look like Dan Campbell, but just look like you like calling defense. That kind of gruff.
You gotta be a little gruff. Yeah.
And Staley looks like he gets manicures and pedicures.
No, but Staley went with the beard for a while. I think that helped him.
I think he was trying to look like he doesn't get manicures and pedicures, but he definitely does. Sorensen, I bet he clips his own fingernails.
Well, look, and one thing that's happening now with coaches more than ever before, especially the offensive guys, is how often they're hitting the treadmill. Because there used to be 0 head coaches that were in good shape.
Yeah.
Now it's 50-50. And it's kind of the new school guys are almost all in good shape now, which is good. I want these guys to live longer.
You had Robert Saleh running stairs, and he still does it.
Yeah.
Now Rex, this was interesting. Prior to me showing up to the Jets facility, I had this thought and the idea of what Rex Ryan looked like in person, because I'd seen him on Hard Knocks, obviously seen him on TV. Come on now, we all saw him on just post game interviews and all that. He had got really skinny by the time I saw him.
That's right. He had that weight loss for a while,
but he had weight loss like surgery. I think he got like gastro.
It wasn't like he'd been working out a lot. He just got the gastric bypass. Whatever.
Yeah. So. Yeah, but he was trying to fit in with the new school guys. His brother, not so much. He's like, no, I'm gonna stay fat. I'm good.
If you want to talk about defensive look, his brother's got that for sure.
His brother, so they're twins, and I didn't realize that at first because one just like the long hair. Yeah. He's bigger, but they are twins. And it was funny him, just listening to him tell stories about how he never had to get into a fight alone because he always had his twin brother, and he kind of compared that to taking the field with everybody. Like, you're never in this alone. So that was kind of a good little.
Love that. Hey, they could still interview Rex.
I really like the Rex.
Probably not going to happen. All right. We got 3 names now. Daniel Bullocks, Nick Sorensen, Brandon Staley. We'll see if any other names are added to the list and see if they actually get this thing done and figure out their coaching staff for 2024. And of course, we'll have it all covered for you. More draft prospects. We're going to be scouting the mock drafts as well. We got a couple of offensive tackles on tap that we're going to be looking at that have shown up in some recent mock drafts. So stay tuned to Locked On 49ers every day. We got you through the draft and beyond. And we will talk to you tomorrow right here. Locked On 49ers.